At the outset, I just have to say I keep getting overwhelmed and moved at the sound of our prayer and especially our singing in this place. The acoustics and the dome help a lot, but I think it's our faith and our devotion and maybe being caught up and swept up in it. But there are days standing here at the altar that I am moved to tears at the sound of our praise of God. And so I just want to thank you for that. There is in our relationship with God, both individually and I think collectively for us as the church, a great movement back and forth, a give and take as we move toward God and God approaches and moves toward us. And then at times we back away and lose sight of his closeness with us. Perhaps it's simply following the pattern of human relationships for us as people come and go in our lives. Maybe with social media seemingly running our lives, it might be more difficult to lose sight of people coming and going because we can so easily keep tabs and check up and follow. And people I haven't seen in years, I know exactly what they're doing because they post everything on social media. At any rate, the way in which our relationship with God evolves is mysterious indeed. The encounters with Jesus in today's gospel got me thinking this week about what my relationship with the Lord must look like at times, and how our shared encounter with the Lord here in the liturgy and in the larger life of the church is always about more than one thing. Jairus came to Jesus seeking help for his daughter who was dying, and Jesus went with him. He was present to Jairus and his family in that time of need. But on the way there, a woman came to Jesus also seeking healing, and while on the way to perform one miracle, Jesus offered another one. And upon arriving at the house, Jesus did more than he was originally asked. I am overwhelmed by the Lord's attentiveness to me, to my life, to my concerns, and my needs. At times, what's so troubling for me is my own inability to do the same for God. How hard it is to be so focused, so available, and so present to him all the time. We prayed an evening prayer tonight, part of Psalm 116. How can I repay the Lord for his goodness to me, for all that God does? But the psalmist just has us say, the cup of salvation I will raise here at the altar, and I will call on the Lord's name. I have that verse of the psalm engraved on the base of my chalice that I use here at Mass. For me, this encounter today, as we meet Jesus on the way and busy about offering these blessings, is really a summons for us. Jesus says more than once today that faith is the key. To the hemorrhaging woman, daughter, your faith has saved you. And to Jairus, do not be afraid, just have faith. In all the comings and goings, being on the way, we have to recognize that Jesus is there with us in the commotion, in the chaos, in the struggles, when the route changes or the circumstances change. God's presence is constant. Perhaps this is resonating as this weekend is all about comings and goings here. As we bid farewell to Father Franz and Father Ray, we've just recently welcomed Luis, and more changes. Luis now wants to go by Nando, if you haven't already heard, which is part of his middle name. He should have told us that 4 weeks ago when we first introduced him, but nonetheless, Luis, I think we have it in the bulletin now with Nando in quotes. So if you hear people referring to Nando, we don't have two seminarians. Well, we do because we have Alex. Is that still your name? Father Lennon will be joining us this week. He wants to be known as Father Lennon, and if that changes, too bad. And in the midst of that, in the confusion of having to learn all these new names, Tomorrow I begin ministry at St. Francis Xavier. I'll be celebrating the 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Masses there, and then rushing back here to be at the end of Father Ray's farewell Mass. So lots of things and coming and going, and Jesus present and active and listening on the way is a great encouragement. He is present to us here in the Eucharist. As we come to him, he comes to us. But he is also present on the way. At times we might be looking for one particular blessing or one particular answer to a prayer, but the Lord might offer something else. We have to pay attention to see not just what we want, but what God has to offer, because God knows perhaps better than we do where the path is really leading us. I find that in the midst of all this chaos, a great consolation. St. Augustine's Confessions begins this way, his great classic work. Some of you have heard me talk about the Confessions before. It's one of my favorite spiritual works. I tried to do a thorough reading of it a few years ago and started it while I was on vacation. It was not a good fit. Lying in a deck chair floating in the Caribbean, it was a little intense. But this is how the Confessions begins. Great are you, O Lord, and greatly to be praised. Great is your power, and of your wisdom there is no end. And man, being part of your creation, desires to praise you. Man who bears about with him his mortality, the witness of sin, and even the witness that you resist the proud. Yet man, this part of your creation, desires to praise you. You move us to delight in praising you, for you have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. Lord, teach me to know and understand of which of these should be first, to call on you or to praise you, and likewise to know you or to call on you. But who calls on you without knowing you? Or perhaps we call on you that we may know you. But how shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And those who seek the Lord shall praise him, for those who seek him shall find him, and those who find him shall praise him. Let me seek you, Lord, in calling on you, and call on you in believing in you. Now that might all sound a bit confusing, or at least confounding. But that admonition that our hearts are restless until they rest in the Lord is that invitation to seek and to trust, to pay attention all the more, and to recognize what Jesus says today, that faith is the remedy for fear. And so we call on the Lord to learn to trust and love him and know him all the more. And doing all that, we can do nothing but offer our praise, our heartfelt praise. For faith is what guides us through the uncertainties, through the chaos, through the unknown. And in him, our hearts shall find rest. Amen.